influence that you have.
You better be careful. We're coming for your children there, buddy.
About my resignation, yes, I'm going to do.
You're going to resign?
Yeah, I'm going.
I've been answering your question. You answer mine.
It's actually not my job to answer your questions.
Thank God for TalkTV. It's not only the home of common sense, it's the only place where you get the truth.
On TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is TalkTV.
Tonight on Piers Morgan Uncensored, after Jeremy Corbyn's staggering refusal to say that Hamas are terrorists or should lose power, can Sir Keir Starmer's Labour face down the growing revolt over its general stance on Israel? Lord Mandelson joins me live for his Piers Morgan Uncensored debut. Star powerlifter April Hutchinson faces a 2-year ban from her sport after comments she made on this show about competing against a biological man. She joins me live. And Marjorie Greene is one of the most controversial politicians, not just in America, but the world. She has Donald Trump's ear, but critics say she's a lunatic conspiracy theorist. Tonight, I'll test that theory.
Live from the News Building in London, this is Piers Morgan Uncensored.
Well, good evening from London. Welcome to Piers Morgan Uncensored. The misery and bloodshed in the Middle East will never end unless people on both sides can accept some absolute truths. Israel has a right to exist and a right to defend itself after terror attacks. Palestinians need a state too, with every freedom and every right that Israelis enjoy. And none of that will ever be possible with Hamas, a terrorist group which perpetrated and then celebrated an historic massacre of Jewish people. That is why I repeatedly asked Jeremy Corbyn last night if he believes Hamas is a terror group and if he believes they should stay in power. Are Hamas a terror group?
Listen, can I...
Are they a terror group?
Piers, can I speak?
Answer the question.
Can I speak?
Are they a terror group?
Piers.
No, then, no.
If you let me speak...
Are they a terror group?
If you'll let me speak, I'll say something.
Go on, then.
A ceasefire means both sides...
You said that. Are they a terror group?
Listen, I said that because
are they a terror
that is
group?
part of the process.
Are they a terror group?
Can we go...
Why can't you say it? Completely baffling, or maybe completely telling. Because if you can't answer that very straightforward question, what possible basis is there for listening to your ideas about what should happen next? It's very revealing that Corbyn's longtime friend Len McCluskey, himself an icon of the British left, was able to answer both questions very easily and looked like he wanted to pretty quickly. I actually agree with Corbyn and the Palestinian supporters about many things. Israel's undoubtedly oppressed the Palestinian people for decades. Israeli expansion on the West Bank is plain wrong and illegal. There are grave concerns about the soaring death toll in Gaza as Israel now seeks to eradicate Hamas. But there can't be any moral ambiguity about Hamas itself. They are a terror organisation who just committed one of the worst terror atrocities in history. Genocide is written into their founding charter. There's been a shocked reaction from across the political spectrum. James Cleverly posted, as Home Secretary, I can confirm that Hamas are a terror group. And here's what David Lammy, a Labour MP who actually nominated Corbyn to be leader, said in Parliament today.
They committed the most brutal attack on Jews since the Holocaust. Now they're using innocent Palestinians as human shields. I'd like to register my shock that not every member of this House can say this truth. Hamas are terrorists.
Well, I also asked Jeremy Corbyn about the time he referred to his friends and Hamas.
10 years ago, I was in a private meeting in the House of Commons with a number of people who were representative of different Palestinian groups. It was an attempt to understand their views and to bring people together. For a short time, a person who was related to Hamas left the room. And I said, in a collegiate, a friendly and appropriate way, as you would at any meeting, where's our friend from Hamas gone?
If only that was all he'd said. But it quickly turned out, thanks to social media, which always keeps receipts, it was just a massive whopper.
Tomorrow evening it will be my pleasure and my honour to host an event in Parliament where our friends from Hezbollah will be speaking. I'd also invited friends from Hamas to come and speak as well. And the idea that an organisation that is dedicated towards the good of the Palestinian people and bringing about long-term peace and social justice and political justice in the whole region should be labelled as a terrorist organisation by the British government is really a big, big historical mistake.
Yeah, I think the big historical mistake was that belief, and that may explain, of course, why Jeremy Corbyn couldn't answer my simple questions last night. If you can't call Hamas a terror group, then frankly, I think you're a terrorist sympathiser. It's not difficult. All of this matters because Jeremy Corbyn retains a big following amongst left-wing people in this country, and he takes centre stage at the pro-Palestine marches. In my view, he does them no favours whatsoever. Left-wing politics has long been dogged by claims of anti-Semitism because it so easily strays into a narrative of oppressors and the oppressed, with all the nuances trampled out. Now, Sir Keir Starmer, quite possibly our next Prime Minister, is facing a revolt over his own position on the Israel war. He's refused to back calls for a ceasefire. 50 councillors have quit in protest. A shadow front bencher, Imran Hussein, resigned his post in protest too. Labour relies on Muslim voters, and many of them are furious. That could make the difference between a majority and a hung parliament, or even a loss at the next election. Well, Starmer's worked hard to drag Labour out of the Corbyn crisis, but the Israel-Hamas war has created a new one for him, and it's not yet clear that he has the answers. Well, my first guest tonight is Labour grandee Lord Mandelson. He served as First Secretary of State in 2009 as the leading advisor to Tony Blair, of course, during his tenure as Prime Minister. And he joins me now. Well, Lord Mandelson, good evening.
Hello, Piers.
It's been a while.
It has, but it's
a
nice
long
to be
while.
back with you.
It is, and I share the joy. I was watching intently the Corbyn sort of fiasco last night. What did you make of that?
It wasn't a fiasco. He was telling the truth.
Which is what?
That he doesn't believe Hamas are terrorists, that he can't find it in himself to condemn utterly the cynical, sadistic, gleeful, cold-blooded murder that Hamas undertook on October the 7th. He sympathises with their aims. And to be perfectly frank, I think it's because he doesn't value the continued existence of the State of Israel. And it's because of that view of his that he's no longer leader of the Labour Party. He no longer has the Labour whip in the House of Commons, and he will not be a Labour candidate at the next election.
Let me ask you this. He remains an MP.
Of course, because he was elected at the last election.
So is there any other mechanism, given his position clearly looks like it's supporting a terror group, is there any other mechanism for him to be removed?
None that I can think of. I mean, there are recall petitions, but that is, I think, in particularly prescribed circumstances. So no, at the next election, he won't be standing as a Labour candidate. If he chooses to stand as an independent, then it will be up to the people of his constituency in Islington to turf him out, and I hope they will.
It sort of shines a light, I guess, on the big debate about the marches, particularly the one that's just happened at Armistice Day and so on, where you have a large body of people genuinely marching peacefully, who genuinely want a ceasefire in Gaza, and I completely respect that opinion. But you have sprinkled among them, in quite large numbers, people whose rhetoric or regalia, whatever it may be, is clearly a step further and in some cases blatantly supporting Hamas or chanting things like death to the Jews or jihad or from the river to the sea.
They're even calling for a free Palestine, and what they mean by a free Palestine is free of Israelis.
So what should happen? What should we do about these marches?
I think you have to, because we're strong in this country and we have a very robust democracy, and we live and let live and respect other people when they express their views, allow them to continue unless they cross the line. And when they engage in racial hatred, if they break the law, the police should go in and prosecute them.
If, as they are, Hamas are a proscribed terror group in this country, if you're a politician who refuses to call them a terror group, is that a crime?
I'm not a policeman. I'm not a member of the Crown Prosecution Service. I can't say. But, you know, the government, Parliament has agreed to prescribe Hamas. And let me make this absolutely clear, Piers, if I may. There's a very, very big distinction and separation between the marginal people who share Jeremy Corbyn's view, which is basically that everything is the West's fault. Everything sort of starts with the corruption and collapse of the capitalist system, and everything everyone else does is excusable on that basis. That is a marginal view. It is anti-Western world view. There's a completely different and separate view, which is shared by many of us in the Labour Party, which is, of course, appalled at the humanitarian catastrophe that's going on in Gaza. As you yourself said in your opening remarks, the scale of civilian death is terrible. The lack of utility supply to the people of Gaza is unacceptable. The continued holding of the hostages is completely unacceptable. The violence on the West Bank is unacceptable. Now, we can all unite around that view, but the idea that somehow we in, the British Parliament can impose a ceasefire on two combatants in this war is, of course, completely ridiculous.
But we could. In fact, we decided to abstain when the UN had a vote on this. But we could have voted. We could have voted as part of the UN to say we support it.
Well, the government chose to abstain.
Yeah.
OK. Well, they no doubt had their reasons.
Is that moral cowardice not to say either way?
Personally, I would have voted against a ceasefire, because we know that the only ceasefire that is possible is one that is unilaterally called by the Israeli side. Hamas are never going to call a ceasefire because it is in their constitution. It's their whole purpose of existing, to destroy the state of Israel.
What does Keir Starmer do about this rising groundswell of opposition from within his own ranks, his own party, who do want a ceasefire and don't like the fact that their leader is being so resolute against it?
Well, he doesn't.
There may even be a vote apparently as early as tomorrow.
No, there may well be a vote. But the Labour Party, the Labour front bench, the leader, Keir Starmer, have tabled a very good amendment to the resolution which is being debated in the House of Commons tomorrow, which sets out why the Labour Party supports a total, comprehensive pause in the hostilities for humanitarian reasons. But that is not the same as a ceasefire, because a ceasefire, by definition, is one that has to be agreed, negotiated and agreed by both sides. Hamas will never agree to that. And so if the Israelis were unilaterally to declare one, they essentially would be handing on a plate to Hamas the very victory that they want. They would come out shooting their guns, replenishing their stocks, continuing to fire their rockets into Israel. Why on earth should the Israelis? How can the Israelis accept that? Of course they can't.
You are a good number cruncher. You know about polling. Interesting and quite worrying polling about Muslim support for the Labour Party has been plummeting and accelerating down as a result of this war. What do you think of that? And what does Keir Starmer do about it?
I understand the sentiment, Piers. I understand there's huge emotion firing people up, and I completely understand why. Now, in due course, this civil war between Israel and Hamas will fight itself to a conclusion. I believe that to be the case. It may not extinguish Hamas, but it will certainly reduce Hamas and remove their ability to kill innocent civilian Israeli people. And that's what Israel has got to do. It has to continue until this is seen through and the job is done. And I think most people in the country will understand and accept that. But I fully understand why there are such powerful emotions when people see the pictures on their television of this humanitarian catastrophe, what is happening to families, to mothers, to children and babies in hospitals which, as we know, are used by Hamas as civilian shields with their command posts in tunnels underneath the very hospitals which the Israelis are trying to get at. It's horrible, but I'm afraid it is a consequence of what Hamas did in the first place on October the 7th.
Is Muslim distrust in the Labour Party a consequence of what you were part of with the Iraq War? You weren't Tony Blair. You were an advisor.
I wasn't in the government at the time.
I know.
Famously.
You were an advisor, but you were part of the team advisor.
No, I voted for it. I voted for it in the House of Commons originally.
And as you know, I was violently opposed to it. and campaigned against it. And as it turned out, the war happened. It was pretty much a disaster. I never thought that Tony Blair deliberately lied, but he got it massively wrong. And there was a massive breach of trust then, I felt, with Muslim people and the Labour Party. Do you accept that?
I do accept that a lot of people lost a lot of faith in the Labour government at the time. You could argue that a mistake was made, but that it was an honest mistake in a sense that that's what you have said in different words. But we've built back that faith and that trust in the Labour Party, and I very strongly believe that we'll do so again when the sort of sheer emotionalism and intensity of this time has passed.
You've got a podcast with the Times called How to Win an Election.
Yeah.
You talk to Keir Starmer all the time. He's in a great position. But is he in a great position as Tony Blair was in 96-7? Or is he in a position that looks great but may not be, like Neil Kinnock in 92?
No, it's not 92. I stood for election in 92, having been the Labour campaign director during the 1980s. No, this is not 1992, but nor would I say it was yet 1997. And I think what Keir Starmer and the Labour Party have got to do over the coming year is having people tuned out of the Conservative government. I mean, they're not listening to the Conservatives anymore, but they're not yet committed fully to the Labour Party. And I don't believe that will happen until next year. People won't start focusing on the alternative. They won't start focusing on the election until we're much nearer it. And it's likely to come in the autumn of next year.
One of the problems that the party may have, other than a dwindling Muslim support, is this.
A woman can have a penis.
I don't think that discussing this issue in this way helps anyone in the long run.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. For the vast majority of women, this is all about biology, and of course they don't have a penis. We all know that. 99.9% of women, it's all biological, and it's very straightforward. My position is, as I've set out, as I say, for 99.9% of women, it's a matter of biology. I completely support that.
Who are the 0.1%? Can you fill the blank for me?
I guess what
of apparently women who have penises. Do you know who they are? Who he's talking about?
Less than 1% of women who have penises. I assume that he's talking about women who choose to identify as women.
Are they women?
But are not biologically
women?
different. No, they're not.
So he's wrong?
Well, I believe that they are essentially in a transition between being having a male identity that they started with and a female identity
your percentage
that they've
would, I don't want you
chosen
to put words in your mouth, but your percentage would be 100.
My view is really quite straightforward. If you have a penis, you're a man, but you can self-identify as a woman should you choose to do so.
But it doesn't make you a woman?
In my view, no.
So you agree with Rishi Sunak, not Keir Starmer?
I don't know what Rishi Sunak's
He said exactly what you just said.
View is, but if he has said exactly the same words as I have used, then it would certainly appear to be that we're in the same place.
Did you ever think you'd agree with a Conservative Prime Minister over your own Labour leader in election year, Peter?
It's not the worst crime in the world.
On a positive note to end, congratulations on getting married.
Thank you very much.
To your long-time partner, Ronaldo, at the Old Marylebone Town Hall, literally October the 27th. Guest Tony Blair, Derek Draper, our mutual friend, who's obviously been going through utter hell with his wife Kate.
And Keir Starmer joined us later.
And Keir Starmer joined later. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's really, really nice.
Enjoying married life?
Heaven knows why after 27 years I left it so long.
Who proposed to who?
Shall I tell you how it happened?
Yes.
He said, you've got a big birthday coming up in October and we're going to give a big party. I said, no, you are not going to give any big party for my big birthday. He said, oh, well, hold on, don't be such a killjoy. We'll get married instead and we'll have an even bigger party.
Really?
Yes.
That's a true story?
It's a true story.
It's a nice story. Good to see you again, Peter.
Nice to see you.
Appreciate you coming in. Lord Madison. Uncensored next, a female powerlifter who was suspended for standing up for women's rights in sport on this show. I'll talk to April Hutchinson next.
Good morning, everybody.
Hope you're well. Thanks for joining us.
You're watching the Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on TalkTV.
Welcome to Friday Night with Nadine.
Here on Primetime, we like to speak to the business people behind big moments.
Good evening, I'm Piers Morgan, Uncensored, in New York City.
Very impressive. Well played.
I'm 3 days into the job. What have I done wrong?
And your face just stared out at me. Me and you, conquer time.
Who wins?
You. Do you know what I love about Talk Today? We do it all. Sunak, Suella, scones.
Are you actually speech rating for Rishi Sunak?
I'm so rich. Frankly, I'm going to take the side of boozed up Brits against these pompous
What, do you mean
Spaniards.
you're not going to support Mayor Jose
No,
Luis
I am
Sanz?
not.
Stop pandying to the NIMBYs, to the naysayers and the National Society for the Preservation of the Habitat of the Lesser Spotted Newt.
The problem lies in the bureaucracy.
It's almost like those highly paid consultants don't really know what they're doing.
The first thing they teach you in weather school is never confuse dog walkers with doggers.
Twitter, you sons of Can you please reinstate my account?
Yeah,
Thank you.
there's a threat that you'd be worried about.
So are you saying that you're being overwhelmed, that you're inundated? We are really working hard for you, and we're just asking patients to be patient with us.
Are we only going to be trusting sources like Meta and Google and Facebook and X, formerly known as Twitter? Where is our unbiased news going to come from?
Welcome to the talk. It's really great to be back. My little darlings. Kids think all they have to do is stay at home, be silly, take pictures of everything.
Just shut down TikTok then, yeah? Problem solved.
Yeah.
Problem solved. There you go.
Who's fit as a butcher's dog?
Him.
Oh, right. but he's now middle class.
Three of us here, Tess.
I nearly have empathy when I'm speaking to them. I know now, you're probably going to boot me off the show after saying this now.
Kevin O'Sullivan is the worst presenter on Talk TV, sitting on his fat arse talking for a living. Got former PMs all over the joint saying things the last few days.
We have indeed, yeah.
Great first show. You having fun?
Oh, a ton of fun.
Yeah. King Piers and King Cube. I think it's only room for one king, man. You know what I'm saying?
Just because they're skin folk don't mean they're kin folk.
When I say I am God, you think I'm joking or not?
You tell me.
I'm not joking.
I'd rather do it on camera.
No. If it's on camera, we're not doing the interview.
Why?
We'll explain why.
How do you feel about that influence that you have?
You better be careful. We're coming for your children there, buddy.
About my resignation, yes, I'm going to do.
You're going to resign?
Yeah, I'm going.
I've been answering your question. You answer mine.
It's actually not my job to answer your questions.
Thank God for Talk TV. It's not only the home of common sense, it's the only place where you get the truth.
Welcome back to Uncensored. Canadian female powerlifter April Hutchinson has been suspended from the sport for 2 years for speaking out actually on this show about trans athletes competing in the sport. The Canadian Powerlifting Union used comments she made against her rival, transgender record-breaking powerlifter Anne Andres, right here on Uncensored as part of the reasoning for the suspension. Here's what she said that apparently was so awful.
So he is a 40-year-old, 6 foot, 250-pound man. Well, that national record that he broke, athletes have been chasing
over you for stating the bleeding obvious. You're the one now who can't compete.
Yeah, exactly. I guess saying truth and fact, calling Andres a biological male is considered hate speech and goes against their social media code. When talking about sports, Piers, you would know this, you have to state what the person is. So I was actually thinking I was being polite saying a biological male, and I was, in fact, saying the truth. So bodies play sports, not identities. So when we're talking about sports, especially powerlifting, a strength sport, you need to say, call a man, call a woman a woman.
Right, because physiology, I'm afraid, is physiology. There's nothing to get away from it. It just seems completely ridiculous to me that for calling this out, this shocking unfairness towards women born with female bodies in women's sport, you can now not compete. I mean, how do you feel about this?
This was a week ago that I found out. I was sitting there on the couch. I opened the email from the ethics committee. I was blown away. 2-year suspension is very harsh. It's a suspension you would give someone that got caught for doping, put it that way. So, I mean, everyone's still shocked about it. I'm very upset. I'm very hurt by my federation. And I do feel that this suspension was issued, let alone focusing on my terminology, to deviate from the real topic at hand, which is unfairness in sports.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Megan Rapinoe, the football player, soccer, of course, over in America, who has just retired. And right at the moment of her retirement, she said, oh, what I'd really want is to see trans women playing in the US women's national soccer team, which is great because it means her place won't get taken. And my response would be, OK, so what happens if Lionel Messi, who's playing in the MLS in America, what happens if he decides to identify as a woman? A, he can, if he wants to. B, there'll be no law against him prohibiting him from playing for the American women's national team. Is that the way we're going to go? Where Lionel Messi suddenly says, I'm a woman, and breaks even more records, but makes it irrevocably impossible for an actual woman to compete. That is where this is going if we're not very careful, isn't it?
Oh, it's true. And you said it, Piers. It doesn't affect Rapinoe anymore. So have fun virtual singling. That's exactly what she's doing. Like for my sport, it affects many lifters. I know 4 lifters off the top of my head that will be competing against Anne coming up and that have a problem with it, that have actually written the federation. 2 people have dropped out. 1 person cut weight so they don't have to compete against Anne. It's not consensual. And I mean, it only takes 1 person to not consent. And the federations that are allowing this, it's disgraceful. It is disgusting that they're allowing this to happen.
Yeah, but it's basically licensed cheating is what it is. And it's like saying that certain competitors can dope. If that was the case, everyone would be up in arms and saying, well, it's unfair because you get an advantage. This is unfair. You get an advantage. I mean, there's another story over here, which I know you're aware of, which has really just staggered me. A health charity in the UK that helps women specifically suffering from endometriosis, which is a condition about the lining of a womb, has now appointed as its chief executive a trans woman, so a biological male. What do you think of that?
I heard that, and I mean, what a huge insult to women. I went for a test the other day. I went for my first mammogram, and, I was just sitting there thinking, like, how would I feel if there was, a man in there with me? It's a very private issue. Even just going into locker rooms, women are very private. Like, I'm always covering myself up, and that's in front of women. So you take something like so private, like a health condition, and you appoint a man in charge, a huge slap to women's faces.
Yeah, it's nuts, isn't it? April, are you going to appeal against your suspension?
Yeah, so the first step, I have a great lawyer. Lisa Bildy is my lawyer. We will be appealing it. We do have 10 days. And then after that, we will be pursuing other legal avenues, which I can't announce right now, but we will be seeking legal action.
Well, I'm very sorry again that it's come to this and that this show has played a part of this ridiculous suspension. I wish you luck with the appeal. We'll follow it. We'll keep in touch, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Good to see you. Well, Uncensored next, my PAC's reaction to that interview and that extraordinary suspension, and to Home Secretary, or the ex-Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, and her scathing resignation letter. Bitter Braverman. What do you make of it? We'll find out after the break.
Good morning, everybody.
Hope you're well. Thanks for joining us.
You're watching The Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on TalkTV.
Welcome to Friday Night with Nadine.
Here on Primetime, we like to speak to the business people behind big moments.
Good evening, I'm Piers Morgan, Uncensored in New York City.
Very impressive. Well played.
I'm 3 days into the job. What have I done wrong?
Yeah.
And your face just stared out at me.
Me and you conquer time.
Who wins?
You. Do you know what I love about Talk Today? We do it all. Sunak, Suella, scones.
Are you actually speech rating for Rishi Sunak?
I'm so rich. Frankly, I'm going to take the side of boozed-up Brits against these pompous
What, do you mean you're not going to support Mayor Jose Luis Sanz?
No, I am not.
bandying to the NIMBYs, to the naysayers and the National Society for the Preservation of the Habitat of the Lesser Spotted Newt.
The problem lies in the bureaucracy.
It's almost like those highly paid consultants don't really know what they're doing.
The first thing they teach you in weather school is never confuse dog walkers with doggers.
Twitter, you sons of Can you please reinstate my account?
Yeah,
Thank you.
There's a threat that you'd be worried about.
So are you saying that you're being overwhelmed, that you're inundated? We are really working hard for you, and we're just asking patients to be patient with us.
Are we only going to be trusting sources like Meta and Google and Facebook and X, formerly known as Twitter? Where is our unbiased news going to come from?
Welcome to the talk. It's really great to be back. My little darlings. Kids think all they have to do is stay at home, be silly, take pictures of everything.
Just shut down TikTok then, yeah? Problem solved.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
There you go.
Who's fit as a butcher's dog?
Him.
Oh, right. But he's now middle class.
Three of us here, Tess.
I nearly have empathy when I'm speaking to them. I know now, you're probably going to boot me out.
This is Talk TV.
Welcome back. I'm joined by my stellar pack, political journalist Ava Santina, Talk TV contributor Paula Rowan Adrian, and Talk TV presenter Alex Phillips. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Rather sexist to have three women in tonight, but there we are. Thank God there's one man here to keep control of them all. Right, Miss Santina, what do you make of... Well, first of all, what do you make of the Jeremy Corbyn interview and Mandelson ripping into him? But let's just take another little look at what Corbyn said last night. Are Hamas a terror group?
Listen, can I...
Are they a terror group?
Piers, can I speak?
Answer the question.
Can I speak?
Are they a terror group?
Piers.
No, then, no.
If you let me speak...
Are they a terror group?
If you'll let me speak, I'll say something.
Go on, then.
A ceasefire means both sides...
You said that. Are they a terror group?
Listen, I said that because
are they a terror group?
Part of the process.
Are they a terror group?
Can we go...
Why can't you say it? Why couldn't he say it, Ava?
Oh, it's not a shining moment for him, is it? Like, I've got no qualms at all with calling Hamas a terrorist group. I think the argument from the Corbyn camp will be that calling them a terrorist group invites Western opinion to then ask, well, why on earth would you do negotiations with a terrorist organisation? And yeah, but obviously the conversation now is about opening a dialogue and finding a way to a peace process. Hamas. And then he also doesn't like the idea that...
He can't have a dialogue with Hamas, can he?
Well, I mean, even there are many Conservative MPs who are now calling for dialogue.
Not with Hamas.
But because... How on earth then do you get Hamas to release the hostages?
You don't. You don't negotiate with Hamas.
But what do you mean? That means the hostages just stay there.
They're a terror group who have a stated mission to eradicate Israel, kill all the Jews they can kill, and they've just perpetrated an atrocity of such scale and just medieval barbarism that they're done as a political force. There is no negotiation with Hamas. Yeah. Whatever side of this you're on, surely we all agree with that, don't we?
Well, no, I don't deny anything that you just said, apart from the latter portion of that, which is you have to have open dialogue with them, otherwise you're not going to get those hostages back. You've also got, nearly 2 million people on that strip that, they've just built a grave this evening for 180 bodies. How on earth do you stop what is going on right now? How on earth do you get to an inevitable ceasefire?
Well, I would flip it around.
Open dialogue with them?
OK, Paula, I would flip it around and say, how on earth do you get rid of Hamas, which most people agree has to happen, without doing what Israel's currently doing? I mean, obviously it's horrendous, the civilian casualties. Obviously it's horrendous that Gaza has a particularly high volume of children. It's heartbreaking. It's terrible. It's awful. But how else do you get rid of Hamas?
By talking, Piers.
To Hamas?
But...
Hamas?
Of course you have to.
Of course you don't.
You don't want to, but you're going to have to.
We didn't talk to ISIS. We didn't talk to Al-Qaeda.
And we know what happened in Afghanistan.
No, actually, with ISIS, we wiped them out pretty much.
And
and we did it, unfortunately, the way the Israelis are doing it. I mean, that's true.
It didn't work with Afghanistan.
Well, we did. We attacked ISIS all over the place, and there were lots of civilian casualties.
We abandoned
but now
Afghanistan.
ISIS doesn't really operate, right? So again, I come back. What's the difference between Hamas and ISIS?
You say that, but you understand how ISIS has been able to infiltrate certain African countries and the difficulties
they're
that
not
are being
completely
caused
finished,
there.
but they are
Of course, they're not completely finished.
The caliphate has pretty much been destroyed.
We're never going to get rid of Hamas by simply utilising bombs.
Are you seriously suggesting?
As much as
right,
that
Paula,
disgusts
are you suggesting
me to
that
say that
we seriously have political dialogue with Hamas about some kind of settlement?
How are we going to get the hostages back, Piers?
Alex, am I going mad, or is this lunacy?
I'm with you. You have to have a surgical operation. You infiltrate the tunnels. You wipe out as many of the tunnels as possible. You try and find your hostages. And when you come across someone who's ISIS, you arrest them, you interview them, you get information out of them, you do whatever you can, and you have to wipe them out. Look, there's no point being tolerant to the
what you're
absolute
saying
intolerance.
shouldn't be done.
You know,
what I'm suggesting is
there's
it's
one
not
thing.
the
There's one
only
thing about
answer.
negotiating with Palestinian authorities, but the problem is Hamas has killed most of them as well.
You just can't. I mean, actually, you can sometimes, right?
And we do. And I think it's naive to suggest that we don't.
But you can't.
We do negotiate with terrorists.
ISIS and now Hamas, when they have a nihilistic view, which means eradicating everyone that they oppose completely, which is what Hamas want to do to Jewish people and Israel. When that is their mission statement, there is no negotiation to be had. And they've now shown what they will do if given the chance. And they said last week through their spokesman, if we can do it again and again and again, that's what we'll do. You cannot negotiate with these people.
Accepting that premise for one moment, then accepting that you might storm the tunnels and destroy the tunnels, what about the Israeli hostages that are there? What are you going to tell to the families
Hamas should
of those
release
people?
the hostages.
But then you've got to talk to them, Piers. We're going round in circles. You've got to have an open dialogue with them,
I'm talking about
haven't
a
you?
peace settlement. There is no dialogue to be done on a peace settlement.
Well, I think we're at cross purposes. Yeah, I think we might be going a little bit around. I think we're at cross purposes.
That's what I'm talking about.
I think the conversation that we're having at the moment is getting to the point of a ceasefire, right? Or getting to the point of returning the hostages and trying to halt what is going on in Gaza at the moment.
The only people that benefit from a ceasefire are Hamas.
No, but you've also got the Israeli hostages who will benefit from that because they will be returned. And the Palestinian people who are currently dying.
Why are we putting words into the mouths of Hamas? I don't think Hamas are even offering to return the hostages. The idea that they want to, and this is their token in this brutality.
Nor do Hamas want peace.
I understand.
And Hamas will kill as many Palestinians as it takes. They don't care.
Yeah. Let's turn to something else. Let's turn to this issue of this power lifter, right, who is now being suspended for 2 years for having the audacity to say it's unfair that a biological male is smashing them all in powerlifting in the women's category.
I actually don't know the details of the story, Piers. I've got to be really honest with you. I mean, on the face of it, look, I think if you are a trans athlete and you have been allowed to compete in that arena, I can see why you.
And why should a biological woman who cries foul about this and says, as it is, it's a biological male competing as a trans athlete? Why is she being suspended?
But if they've been allowed by the board to compete...
No, why is she being suspended? The actual woman in the situation.
Well, I don't know.
Huh?
I don't know. I thought we were talking about endometriosis. I was ready for that.
Let's talk about that, Paula. Endometriosis. Why? Why have a trans CEO? Why have a biological male for a charity which literally only applies to women with a condition only women get?
OK, so let me answer that question. Because I'll do that with some analogies. So, are you saying to me that as a white man, you cannot sympathise or empathise with me suffering from racism? Are you saying to me that because you're a man, you shouldn't be able to treat me as a doctor for endometriosis, or you shouldn't be able to campaign on my behalf, or if I had
cancer of the womb... No, I'm saying if you're running a charity, you have to...
So you're going to campaign for me passionately, push my cause, but Alex, you shouldn't be able...
But Alex, my question would be...
Piers, you're cutting me off. Are you saying that that's wrong?
I'm asking Alex to answer the question.
I just think it's all a madness. Can we just stop playing this fantasy game where men can suddenly be women? I mean, make it stop. It's utterly ridiculous.
To what job you do.
To me, it's just, it's woke. It's woke to a hyperactive
your gender is woke.
It is trolling women, quite frankly. And I'm sorry, look, if you're going to say, I'm now a woman, that's almost like saying, well, biology doesn't exist and endometriosis can happen to anyone.
I've been really struck by the number of women who've been incensed about this, who are not normally that incensed about stuff, who've said to me, I'm enraged by this.
Look.
Are you?
I think that it's confected outrage because if you look at, who are normally treating women in a maternity ward? You've got male nurses there, you've got male gynecologists. We've never had an issue before with, a different gender treating biological women. For some reason, that there's been this sort of confected outrage against the CEO. Look, if she's going to be up there and she's going to speak about endometriosis, which, by the way, has not been talked about for the best part of, forever, I don't care. As long as she actually does something, does some scientific research into it, great.
OK. Well, there we have it. If even women were stand up for women's rights, why should I poke my nose into it? Thank you, Pac. Good to see you all. Uncensored next, one of the most controversial politicians in America, Marjorie Taylor Greene, joins me live.
Coming up at 9 o'clock on the Independent Republic of Mike Graham, we're going live to Israel, where we're going to find out if there is going to be a deal to release as many as 80 hostages out of Gaza by Hamas. We'll be going to Washington, D.C. and more trouble for the Tories. It's all coming up after Piers.
Welcome back to Uncensored. Thousands of people rallied in Washington today against surging anti-Semitic attacks since the Israel-Hamas conflict began. Incidents in the US have spiked by nearly 400%. People from all over the nation have travelled to the March for Israel, which also demanded the release of hostages taken by Hamas. Well, from Washington, I'm joined now by Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, whose new book, called MTG, is out soon. Well, welcome, MTG. You are a very...
Hi. Thank you for having me on.
No, my pleasure. You're a very controversial character. Depending who I talk to, they say you're an absolute firebrand, the female Donald Trump. Others say you're a conspiracy theory whack job. How do you plead?
Well, I'm only controversial because people like you made it that way, Piers. And that's why I wrote my book, MTG.
What have I done?
People in your industry, they created a character of me that doesn't exist. And so I wrote my book, MTG, so that I could tell my country and tell the world exactly who I am and what my real views are, which are not radical. They are not controversial. They're actually very American, and they represent the views of not only my district, but most Americans who are sick and tired of being sold out by Washington.
So you never promote ridiculous conspiracy theories?
Well, if you mean by Russian collusion, absolutely not. Those are the conspiracy theories and the lies of the Democrats and the media.
Well, I agree with you about Russian collusion.
So no, I never promoted those.
I agree with you about that. It was ridiculous. I said so at the time.
Well, there was no, yeah.
No, and we were borne out. But for example, I want to play you a clip from a guy called Bassem Youssef. He was known as the Arab Jon Stewart. And I interviewed him recently about the war. And he said this about you.
The saddest thing that I saw is the people that were in so much support of Israel are anti-Semite themselves. MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, you know, she said like, oh, those are, I send my aides, and they took pictures of the protesters. Basically, she's surveilling protesters. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is very known for a very famous post in 2018 where she blamed the California fires on a Jewish space laser gun.
Now, you did, didn't you? Because I've read that post. I went and got it, and I read it. November 17, 2018, you posted a long thing on Facebook that was just complete gobbledygook. I mean, you made out that the Rothschilds and
I talk about Jewish space lasers
do you admit
in my
that
book
was a
because
lunatic?
that's something I never said. No, excuse me, Piers. I never said that phrase. That was a lie about me. If you read my original Facebook post, I never said, and that's why I had to write this book, because people like you and whoever that guy was, who sounds like one of the trolls in my social media, attacking me and calling me names when he's never met me. I'm not anti-Semitic at all. I support Israel, and I am outraged at Hamas attacking innocent Israeli citizens, women,
Marjorie,
children, slaughtering babies.
I'm not calling you anything. I'm just saying that you did post this crazy post, basically alleging that...
the media lied about it, and that's why I wrote my book, Piers, because I'm setting the record straight. And I hope people order my book at mtgbook.com. It's a great read. People need to know exactly who I am, and what I really believe and stand for.
It's a very good plug for the book, but you did suggest in this post, which I've read very carefully, you did suggest that the California wildfires at the time had been started by PG&E in conjunction with the Rothschilds using a space laser in order to clear room for a high-speed rail project. They're your words, not mine.
Well, you know, people have twisted my words nonstop, and I guess that's what you're going to continue to do. But we're working hard in America to straighten out our problems. You are. You're doing a great job of it, Piers, and that's what you and your colleagues do all the time.
Marjorie,
I just don't. I don't handle it. I don't deal with it, and I cast it to the
Marjorie,
side.
I have
you know, there's a lot of issues happening that we could talk about.
I'm going to come to those.
We could talk about.
But before we move on, though, you have to just accept what you wrote yourself, don't you? You deleted it. So obviously you were embarrassed by it.
Well, that would be like me asking you to accept the fact that you defended prisoners at Guantanamo Bay, but never say anything about January 6th defendants who are having their rights abused and are rotting away in solitary confinement here in our country, and especially in the D.C. jail. You know, if we're going to talk about each other's words, let's hold each other to account and to issues that really matter, not social media posts from the past.
I don't know what you're referring to on Guantanamo Bay, but what I would say about Guantanamo Bay is it's clearly ridiculous that America kept this open-ended camp where people were kept without trial, sometimes for more than 12 years. It's completely ridiculous in a civilized democratic society that you would do that. Now, let's move on from my words.
Well, in a civilized democrat society, we shouldn't be holding American citizens that simply walk through the Capitol, grandmothers and mothers and veterans, walking through the Capitol, never doing anything wrong, and they're rotting away in jail and being persecuted by our Department of Justice and our government that has completely gone out of control. So if you're going to talk about one, we should talk about the other.
Let's talk about January 6th, by all means. I mean, I know what I witnessed with my own eyes, and it was a huge violent mob.
Oh, wait, were you here?
It was, sorry?
Were you here?
No, I watched it on television.
You weren't here. Oh, I was here. Piers, let me tell you, I was here. I was actually in the House chamber because I objected to Joe Biden's Electoral College votes.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of that. I would object again today if I could.
You did suggest that
people... I was there.
But you did suggest that people use violence to thwart democracy, didn't you?
Well, you mean like in 1776 when we beat your country? Is that what you're talking about?
If you want to
reference... No, I didn't talk about violence on January 6th. If you want to reference 1776... What I did talk about is objecting, using my constitutional duty that I have as a member of Congress to object to fraudulent electoral college votes.
Let me play you what you said.
Absolutely, I did that.
Let me play you what you said. Let's play what you said. Your own words.
This is an important time in our history. We can't allow this just to be gone, you know, just to let it go. You can't allow it to just transfer power peacefully like Joe Biden wants and allow him to become our president because he did not win this election. It's being stolen and the evidence is there.
So there can be no peaceful transfer of power. So what's the opposite of peace?
That's why we objected, Piers. That's why we objected.
And that's why, Marjorie, a gigantic
privilege
mob
that I have as a member of Congress.
Okay, but let me make my point.
There was a law firm that tried to take me off the ballot, and they were laughed out of the courtroom in Georgia.
Let me make my point.
And you were giving their talking points. I can't tell you how much people in Georgia would think this is ridiculous.
Let me give you my talking point, which is that a huge mob of people, many of whom were violent, crashed into the Capitol to try and thwart democracy.
Wait, do you mean like...
Because people like you, Marjorie...
pro-Hamas
people like
rioters?
you said two things.
You mean like the pro-Hamas rioters?
No. I'm talking about January 6th.
That came in and occupied our Capitol on October 18th?
Marjorie,
that Rashida Tlaib herself led?
Answer my question.
No, wait, we're in 2023, Piers.
Marjorie, answer my question.
We just had a pro-Hamas mob.
You've written a book in which you talk about these things.
Okay. And Rashida Tlaib led it.
Can I ask you a question? Can I? Let me ask you the question. I want to ask two questions. One, presumably when you say there can be no peaceful transfer of power, you mean there has to be some violent objection to it, which is exactly what we then saw on January the 6th.
I didn't say violence. You're
there can be
putting
no
words in my
peaceful
mouth, and I'm not
transfer of
going to
power.
let you do that.
You said there can be no...
Piers, I'm not going to let you... You're lying. I'm not letting you put words in my mouth that I never said.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
You want to know where the real election interference happened? It happened with Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and Russian collusion.
I'm not talking about that.
And
I've agreed with you about that.
Hell for 4 years
I've agreed with you about Russian collusion. Let's agree about that. But let's not agree about the stolen election. I told Donald Trump to his face, and he didn't like it, called me a fool 7 times, that the election was not stolen from him. He has singularly failed to produce any actual hard evidence that there was any stolen election. Do you still believe that election was stolen?
Piers, you're not even a voter in our country. No. And I can tell you right now, as a Georgia resident and a member of Congress, in Georgia, our Secretary of State illegally changed the laws. So did Wisconsin. So did Pennsylvania to allow our states to be flooded with absentee ballots. We have cases in court today. You should look them up. Fulton County case. These are cases that are about to be heard in the next few months. Piers, excuse me.
Marjorie,
we're about to prove those cases.
It wasn't stolen.
You can think that all you want, but you live over in Britain.
It's not just me
I'm
saying
an American.
it.
I'm a Georgia voter. I'm a member of Congress. I've seen the evidence.
Marjorie,
our election was stolen in 2020, and we are going to re-elect President Trump in 2024.
We'll come to what you're going to do, but just for the record, I do have a home in America, and I spend a lot of time in America, and I have lived and worked in America for 20 years. I love America. I love Americans. I particularly love your democratic system, and I don't like to see elected officials in America, whether it's you or Donald Trump, pretending you had an election stolen when there is actually no evidence it was stolen. And in fact, many senior Republicans agree
of evidence,
it wasn't
Piers,
stolen.
And if you aren't able to, if you aren't capable of believing the truth,
prove it in the courts.
That's your problem.
Prove it in the courts.
It is being proven.
It's not being proven in the
Look up the Fulton County
courts.
case. Look up Georgia cases.
No court
They're
has
in the courts
upheld
right now.
a stolen election.
Piers, don't lie to your viewers. There are
Marjorie,
cases
I wouldn't
right
call you
now.
a liar.
Oh, so you're telling me suitcases of ballots being pulled out from under the table?
Marjorie, I'm not calling you a liar.
Have you watched the videos?
I'm simply
Stacks
saying,
of ballots being put through
Marjorie, as I said to Donald Trump,
counted over and over.
Marjorie, as I said to Donald Trump, I'm not saying you're lying. I'm just saying produce the evidence, because no court in America has so far established any evidence that that election was stolen. It's for the birds. It's cloud cuckoo stuff.
That's because those cases were dismissed on standing, but we have cases coming up, Piers. Pay attention so that if you really want your viewers to know the truth,
if you prove
pay
me
attention
wrong,
to these cases happening right now.
Let's have a bet.
Let's talk. Do you have anything in 2023?
Yes.
Because we've done January 6th, stolen election.
Yes, I do.
Okay, what do you got?
Here's what I've got.
How about my book? MTG. This is going to be
about
great.
your book.
MTGbook.com.
Let's talk about you. You plugged it enough. You
it.
plugged it enough. Let me ask you: is Donald Trump going to win the election?
Absolutely. He's blowing it out of the water. The primary is a joke, and he is winning poll after poll on the general election.
And if he gets convicted of one of the myriad criminal offences he's been charged with, and if, I'm not saying when, if he is convicted and he gets a jail sentence, will he be president from a prison cell?
Absolutely. People are going to vote for him even if he is in jail. I would vote for him even if he's in jail because we have communism in our country, Piers. We have the Biden administration that is using the Department of Justice like the campaign arm of the Biden campaign. It's unbelievable, and Americans know this. That's why people that are independents, Democrats, many voters are switching over to supporting President Trump because they're seeing it for the first time in their lifetimes.
OK, Marjorie, we've got to leave it there. It was a lively encounter. Come back again, and thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Piers.
That's it from me. Whatever you're up to, keep it uncensored. Good night.